Welcome to Allium, your partner in managing urologic strictures with precision. Let's walk through how to select the right Allium stent for your patient's needs. First, look at the tips written on top of the page here. For ureteric strictures, choose the Allium URS. Always remember, the more you have surface area of the stent on the internal ureteral tissue, the more friction and less migration. This is why we recommend to use in most cases the 9mm diameter and 200mm length, our largest stent. For UPJ, use the 9/200ths as first choice. For the mid-ureter, it depends on the stricture length, really, and where you want to locate. Always remember that the minimal length of the stent should be at least 3 cm longer than the stricture length, considering 1 cm soft edges from both ends of the stent. For strictures close to the ureteral orifice, stent should protrude 1 cm into the bladder. It can be either OR 10-120 or OR 9-200. For UPJ, structure stent will protrude 1.5 to 2 cm into the renal pelvis. Please use not less than 2 cm overlap between consecutive stents when calculating the total length of consecutive stents for entire ureter stenting. For Wallace anastomotic strictures in the connection to the ileal conduit, always use 2 9/200mm stents to avoid one stent pressuring the other ureter. For separate connection points like in Bricker, use the 9/200mm. For post-renal transplant strictures, ureter will be much shorter, therefore use the URS OR 10/80mm or the OR 10/100mm depends on the length of the ureter. In some cases, ureter might be short and 1 9/200ths will be enough to cover the entire ureter, but in most cases, ureter is longer than the 9/200mm, so if needed in case of multiple strictures, retroperitoneal fibrosis, or inoperable tumor pressuring the ureter causing external stricture, cover the entire ureter with 2 9/200mm consecutive stents, which is stent-in-stent technique. In general, only use the anchored stent indicated by the letter R on the label of the product box when the doctor insists on the anti-reflux mechanism in the bladder orifice, otherwise use the OR, which is without an anchor. Let's exercise a stent selection. Given a 5 cm stricture in the lower part of the ureter, you need a stent long enough to cover at least 5 cm of the stricture plus 3 cm covering both ends of stricture plus 1 cm into the bladder equals 9 cm stent or 90mm. As we don't have a 9 cm stent, the next one is 10 cm or 100mm, so use that one in this case. Now, stent sizes are easy to memorize. For retrograde delivery system URS, without an anchor OR, it is either 8 or 10mm diameter and 60, 80, 100 or 120mm length, and the unique largest stent, which is 9mm diameter and 200mm length. For anterograde with anchor and retrograde with anchor, you only have 8 or 10mm diameter and 100 or 120mm length. Remember, in general, the diameter of all stents is either 8, 9 or 10mm when fully open. When stent is first deployed, it usually opens only 70 to 80% and might deploy even to higher diameter during the indwelling time. Make sure doctors understand that. BUS stents are 45 French diameter again, only when fully open and 50, 60 and 80mm length or 80mm reverse. For BUS stent, the basic rule is that overall, when stricture is located less than 2 cm from the external sphincter, you use the normal BUS stent due to its proximity to the sphincter and its anatomic shape in the edge that fits the sphincter. To choose the length of the stent, use the same basic rule of stricture length plus 3 cm, 1.5 cm coverage of each side of the stricture. You can also just look at the table shown here. For strictures located longer than 2 cm from external sphincter, please use BUS reverse, as you don't want the anatomic shape edge of the stent to cause migration made by urine flow. TPS stents come in 45 French when fully open and 30, 40, 50 and 60mm length. We recommend to protrude into bladder maximum of 0.5 cm. But only make sure to pick the right length to ensure the body of the stent does not protrude into the external sphincter and disrupt its functionality. Only the wire should cross it. You need to be precise here. If stricture is 4 cm, use the TPS 40mm, not the 50. If 3.5 cm, use also TPS 40mm, and if 3.2 cm, for instance, use TPS 30mm. RPS is also 45 French diameter when fully open, like all Allium's urethral stents, or in their name, OPS stents. It only has 2 lengths, 30 and 40mm. RPS stent is used for post-prostatectomy strictures in the bladder neck, so make sure the prostatic urethra is at least 2.4 centimeters length after surgery, and in this case use RPS 30mm. Otherwise, do not use Allium in this case, because the stent will migrate with very high probability. If size is correct, protrude maximum of 0.5 centimeters into the bladder. To recap, stent selection is one of the most important things to keep in mind before deployment to make successful implantation and better long-term results with less to none migration and less to none hyperplasia. Aspire to use URS 9/200 mm in most cases. Plan ahead where each side of the stent will be positioned. Stent is only opening 70 to 80% when deployed. Consider consecutive stents when needed and pay attention to details and tips in this short movie. On behalf of Allium team, we wish you a correct stent selection experience and a good implantation. Good luck!